Hello, everybody. While we just wait for people to join, perhaps you could introduce yourself in the chat. Maybe just say who you are and where you're from. I think we've got a worldwide audience here today. I'll introduce myself in a minute when everyone joins. Um, Also, please make sure that your microphones are muted. However, there will be question and answer session at the end, so feel free to drop questions and answers into the Q&A section at the bottom, or if you end up putting it in the chat, that's fine too. We will be monitoring the chat, and I'll respond to some questions maybe at the end of the presentation today. So again, we'll just wait for people to join. Give everyone a minute or so. Okay, so I'm going to get underway. So I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Jason Roberts, and I am a senior partner at Origin Editorial, which is one of the world's largest providers of peer review management. And I'm delighted to be able to give this presentation to you today. I was thrilled to be invited by the folks at EASE. And this session is about conceptualizing and designing a poster for presentation. And the reason why EASE is putting the session on is that EASE has a poster session at its 18th General Assembly and Conference in Oslo, Norway in May. And so I'm hoping that many of you will submit a poster. I'm looking forward to seeing those when I get there. So this presentation today will focus on issues to think about when designing, when you design a study for a poster presentation. Now, some of you may already have undertaken your study, and that's fine. Some of this then will therefore be obvious to you. And if you're a researcher, some of this might seem will be the fundamental things that we do as researchers, in which case I want you to think about how you can convey some of that information in your poster. Because one of the challenges that I find when I read a poster is I don't have enough information to either validate or replicate what I've just seen. So, and some of that can be just tabulated and simply documented. So if you're a researcher, some of this may seem obvious, but I know a lot of you aren't researchers, and in which case I'm going to try and guide you through what you can do to come up with a really great research question and how to answer it, and then develop an awesome poster. So before we get going, two things I just want to say. The first is that this presentation will be made available to you as attendees within the next day. And then it will also be available on the YouTube channel as well. And then the second thing is we're just going to do a quick poll to establish who we are. So here we go. So if you could just take a few seconds to read these questions and answer them, and then we'll have a look at the results. Okay. All right. So we've got a slight bias towards people that have prepared a poster before. So there's a sense then that we'll maybe just look at these things that you have thought about including. You've done this before. Maybe you've learned some of these things through having done one. And then let's have a look. Are you thinking about preparing one for the meeting? Well, I'm going to try and convert some of you maybes into definites. So yes, you will. And of course, you can submit these, and it's ideal if you can be at the meeting, but you don't necessarily have to be. We want to be able to see your research questions answered. Okay, I think there was a third question, wasn't there? Yeah, here we go. So which type of poster are you considering submitting? Okay, so about 2/3 of you are thinking a scientific poster. That's good to know. And about maybe a third of you are coming perhaps from an editorial office and are thinking of a poster to submit in that category. Okay, right. So I am now going to move over to my presentation. Okay. So we're going to create a compelling scientific and poster and also a video presentation. So I'll talk about those a little bit as well towards the end. Okay, just quickly, my conflict of interest as such. As I mentioned, I'm a senior partner at Origin Editorial, and we provide management services mostly for scholarly societies, but for some publishers and also funders. But I have no conflicts related to this presentation. Okay, so why create a poster? I think the main reason for doing this is to really just, you have a question, a burning question, you've answered it, and you want the world to know about this. And this could be for a number of reasons. You want to find out, do other people experience the same issue? Have other people got a different opinion on the matter that you're conveying? You can get feedback from colleagues and peers, people that you've never met before, people that you've known for years. Maybe they'll want to, collaborate with you in future to study something more. It could be that you just want to justify coming to a meeting, and that's fine. That's why a lot of people do posters. Then when they're doing a poster, then they can justify traveling. And then also, and this is the main reason why I've always done posters, is it's a great chance to network and build connections as well, and future collaborations perhaps. And I think that's really important because this is a chance for you to share your ideas, but perhaps hone them. I mean, you may have developed a way of doing something better, only for someone to say, "Well, I've done something a little different, and I got slightly different results," and then you can discuss what's the best way forward. Maybe there's a joint way forward. And sometimes big things come from a little poster. So let's just understand there are going to be three classifications of ease posters. So there are scientific posters. Those I think are pretty self-explanatory, but it could be maybe you're studying an intervention that you did to improve the quality of peer review. It could be measuring the outcome change based on maybe some clinical reporting that you were doing, changing in reporting of a clinical action. In the scholarly publishing process and innovation posters, I think maybe what you're looking at there are perhaps you're an editorial office and you've made a workflow change, and maybe to account for all the increased ethics demands that we now face. And so what you're doing there is studying what you did. So it might be a pre and post intervention study. And then finally, we have community engagement and collaboration posters. And those are perhaps for folks that are in the EASE regional chapters or special interest groups to describe different things that you're doing, activities there. And this could be more, maybe less rigid format to some of the stuff I'll talk about today, but it's talking about your mission, the activities, impacts, and goals. And so there will be prizes in each of these categories, and you will, when you go to generate your poster, you can pick which of these categories that you feel your work fits into. The second step is understanding the ease requirements. So they must be smaller than A1 size, these posters. They will be printed at the conference venue if you are, if you're going, you don't have to bring it along with you. Ideally, if you can do a 5-minute video presentation, as a supplementary file, I guess, to your poster, I would encourage that. It's a great chance for you to extend the message, maybe make it a little more forceful, because sometimes a poster doesn't always convey maybe the true impact of what you're doing here. But the audio must be in English, and we will online publish it alongside the poster. The format must be in PDF, can be portrait or landscape. And then the third step for you to consider is the timeline. So you have until April 10th to submit an abstract. So this is what you do first. You write an abstract explaining what your poster will be about, submit that to EASE, and it will get assessed. And if we feel that it's of merit, and I'm pretty sure it will be, if you've made the effort to turn up today, I'm sure your abstract will be of merit, then we will encourage you to get your poster done. You then just have a few days to get the poster submitted. And then the poster will go live on the conference web pages on May the 1st. And on the 14th of May, they'll go live in the conference venue itself. And then the winners will be announced on the 16th. And good luck to all of you that are doing it. Posters will be assessed with the following 4 criteria. And the numbers reflect the weightings, the ranks. So 20 marks out of 50 will go to the organizational framework, 10 marks will go to novel nature, and so forth. In the rest of this presentation, I'm going to break down those marking sections. So I've structured my presentation to speak to each of these 4 areas, okay? So let's look at the study framework, first of all. And this is, again, if you're an experienced researcher, some of this will be blindingly obvious, but the reason why I'm reiterating this is not everyone's a researcher here today, but also because I think sometimes this gets forgotten. I think a lot of people take shortcuts on the posters and just assume that we're going to fill in the blanks, and it's not always possible for the poster reader. So before you get going, define your objectives, what it is that you're trying to achieve here. and write out a problem statement. I think sometimes people get so into what they're doing, they forget that to actually clearly define what the problem is, it makes sense to them. But for somebody coming at your poster cold, they've literally gone from one poster and they've come to the next, it's going to be hard for them to understand where are you coming from and why we're even doing this. Okay, so then you want to establish your research question. So don't, start looking at data and then come up with a question. Come up with a question and then collect your data around that question. And we'll talk about that a little bit in a moment. And also create a little bit of a literature review. I think all good posters should have at least 2 or 3 references, if not more. And I mean, ideally it would be more, but space is of a premium. But definitely come up with some stuff that we can then go away and read afterwards. So again, determine the problem that you're studying or solving. Record carefully how you collected data as step-by-step actions taken. So whatever you do, whether it's collecting data or you make a workflow change or whatever, make sure you document in the poster as well what it is you did, okay, so that we can understand that. Also, think about, before you get going, potential for failures and also for confounders. So, I mean, a simple one, if you're in the editorial office, a simple one might be, let's say you just wanted to report turnaround times, but a confounder to that could be special papers that are being, run through a different workflow. So those can be a confounder. So you have to figure out, what are you going to do with those? Are you going to include them or exclude them? Well, if you make a decision as to what to do, your poster really ideally should say that that's what you did. Because if somebody else wants to copy what you have done, it's going to be hard for us to do that exactly if we don't know precisely what you did. So reproducibility is critical. The other thing that's critical is applicability. When you design your study, there's going to be a broad group of people that are going to, or your research question, there's going to be a broad group of people that are going to look at your poster. Some of them are researchers, some of them are not. A lot of them are only going to know the context that they know, which is either their research environment or the journal that they work at or the publisher that they work at. So you need to be able to think about, okay, is this unique to me? Or what are the broader implications of what I'm telling you right now? Okay, this knowledge that I'm conveying here today, is it applicable to other contexts? So think about that. Okay, so you need to think about 4 things when you're developing your data that you're going to collect. And that is literally how it's going to be collected. And I'm going to dwell on each one of these points in the next slides. How is it going to be organized? How is it going to be analyzed? And then how is it going to be presented? Now, if you've come today just thinking it's just going to be about presented, this presentation does contain more information than that. It's not just about literally how you design a poster. So let's look at each of these things. So let's look at collected first of all. So I thought it might be easier for me to just give an example of the things you need to think about before you just launch into answering your research question. And again, researchers, you probably know this, but for those that aren't researchers, I often see people they got the question, they just go. They just start extracting data from the submission system or wherever you're getting your data from, and they don't really think too much about subtleties and confounders and that sort of thing. So if you're doing a survey, let's say that you're surveying your readers on something, you've launched a new feature, how did the readers like it? Or maybe you've launched a new ethical attestation process. How are authors responding to it? Do they like it or not? Do they find it a burdensome? Do they understand what they're supposed to do? So if you're doing a study, think about what are the best types of questions to elicit the answers you need and that you can also analyze them. So, a free text answer is great for giving people the chance to say what they want to say, but that also becomes a devil to try and then analyze across all the other answers. So, maybe something with a numerical option or multiple choice option is a way to go. There's pluses and minuses for each of these things. If you do it one way, it might restrict the types of answers you're going to get. So you have to balance that out, determine what is the best way to do it. And then if you are going to do free text boxes, how are you going to handle qualitative responses? How will a survey be conducted? Most people use SurveyMonkey, but there are other ways. Are you going to do it face to face? Are you doing it like we just did the poll before? Have you measured how long it's going to take? And what happens if somebody does half of the survey and doesn't finish it? These are all things you need to think about. So I'm not going to run through each of these things, but these are all points that I'm trying to convey that before you launch, stop and think about what it is you're going to do. And if you are doing a survey, a critical thing is pilot it before you actually then go out to your proper test environment. Take a small subset and just pilot it with them, because you'll very quickly find out whether or not people are responding in the way you thought they would to the questions that you've asked. It's amazing how people can take apart your seemingly obvious question and come up with rather complex ways of interpreting it. Organizing data, that was the second of the four things that I talked about a couple of slides ago. This is critical when we start thinking about subsets, okay? So if you just want to take a vast volume of data, that's great, but maybe there's lots of variance within that data based on a number of things, and I'm going to talk about those in the next two slides. But determine if you have enough data to power your hypothesis. So for those of you that are skilled researchers, you'll know how to do that. For those of you that are in editorial office, I appreciate you can really only work with what you've got. Obviously, an N of 1 is not particularly representative. So, you've got to try and figure out, do you have enough data to power the question, the answer to the question that you're posing? And is the subset, if you decide to split your data up into different subsets, is it meaningful and representative? So obvious thing might be to split it maybe by age, or it could be by income, or it could be by skill levels, research skill levels, that sort of thing. And then make sure that you document clearly in your poster how you split the data. Okay, so one way might be in your table. You might have the different subsets and then the N, the number of people in each of those subsets. And it's really important that you do that, because we need to be able to replicate and validate what you've done. Okay, so we need to know how you spliced your data. So different things different subsets might be purpose, and that could be things like for training before you actually get going on your study, maybe for exploratory or confirmatory, before you launch into your big study, just test with some data first. An obvious one is temporal or spatial. So if you collected data over time, maybe you segment it, maybe by quarter or something like that. Spatial, obviously, by country, by continent, whatever. Attributes could be demographics or clinical characteristics. The random sampling could be things like, did you just simply randomize, or did you stratify your sampling, perhaps by age group or income? Data quality is all about whether the data was clean, complete, or whether it's messy. So you might have to break your data up that way. Experimental conditions, so treatment versus control. It could be pre-intervention, before you did something, and post-intervention, after you did something. Outcome or target variables, so it could be split by outcomes, such as whether people responded to something or whether they didn't respond to something. Acquisition sources are literally, where did the data come from? So if you've got lots of different sources, maybe you have to then segment it into the different sources. And then statistical techniques. So again, if you're doing pretty sophisticated stuff, maybe you have to separate it for regression, clustering, and so forth. So again, if some of this sounds, whoa, I'm just an editorial office person, this sounds really technical. You actually would be doing this. You probably just not thought about it in such a technical way, but I bet you probably have thought about splitting your data based on article type or author demographics, that kind of thing. So you do actually do that. Maybe you haven't really consciously thought about it, but it is important that you do think about it, and it is important that you document it, so that if you are breaking your data up, that when you tabulate it, we can see that breakup. The third thing on my list of 4 things that you need to do when developing your data is think about how you're going to analyze this. And that determines, you've got to think about, is there the potential for a lot of error in this data? And has it been collected in a consistent manner? What are you going to do with outliers? Are you going to exclude them? And if you are going to exclude them, where's the cutoff point? And then you need to make a note of that in your poster. If you say, yeah, we got rid of all these outliers for whatever reason, maybe it's you're trying to look at something like improved reviewer turnaround times, and you've got, most people are under 50 days, but you've got 5 that are like over 200 days. Do you exclude them because they're going to, affect your results? If so, where's the cutoff? Why did you exclude them? That's an obvious case. Sometimes it's less obvious. For real research grade stuff, it is good if you can record what software or tools you used. So, did you use R for your data analysis, or did you use SPSS, whatever? There are different tools out there. It's important to know that. And again, record in your poster all the analytical issues that will help people replicate your work. So you might not think it's important that you just excluded 20 papers over there, but it is important. So do make a note of that. And these aren't things that people are going to judge against you. We just need to know, and we need to know why. Okay, so let's think about creating a research question. So my advice would be, if you're thinking about doing this for the EASE conference in Oslo, is first of all, just look at past posters, and they are available online. Look at past posters and think about, well, okay, that seems to be generally where people are going. I think my question fits in with that. It's a good fit. So do look at those, but also look at past research literature questions as well. So if you're interested in a particular topic and that has been discussed in the research literature, then I would definitely, try and see if your work fits in that narrative. Maybe use the language that's used. So if certain terms are being used, try and use those terms rather than just making up your own terms if terms are already out there and seem to be used. It's really, really important that you contextualize your question within previous studies or conversations about a phenomenon. So if somebody's published about this, make sure that you are aware of that and draw the poster reader's attention to that so that we all are aware of that this is a debate that's going on. Don't just assume that people will understand automatically what on earth it is you're talking about, because they probably won't. And again, if you are, not a professional researcher, you are just, somebody in an editorial office. There are, EASE itself has published these things. CSE, ISMTE, they've all put articles out on these things. Quick Google search will often reveal these sorts of things. But again, talk to other people, talk to peers about what they know as well, and think about, is this something or other that I just think everyone knows about? And you might find that actually it isn't, and therefore you need to provide the relevant context. I cannot stress this enough, because so often I will read a poster and I have no idea why I'm supposed to be even looking at this. Why is this a big issue? I have no clue. It's the first I've heard about it. That ignorance could be on my part, or it could be that it just simply hasn't been conveyed clearly enough. So let's think about some potential questions. Now, again, I'm figuring if you're a researcher, you already know how to do this. So this part of the presentation, if you can just bear with me, is for those that don't regularly produce research and are thinking, well, how do I come up with a question? And I just said, look at past posters. That's a good idea to see how people are framing questions. But here's some that seem to be quite relevant right now to those working at journals. Such as integrating AI. God only knows we're dealing with enough AI stuff these days. So there are many, many topics that are coming up. How are we going to manage these in a workflow? How do we respond to these new technologies? How do we convey this to authors and editors? A lot of this is also sharpening the focus on ethical issues. Integrity issues have never been bigger, and it's taking up more and more time. Improving author experiences. So this is a classic one where if you've made a change to your workflows, reporting what the workflow was before and then what happened afterwards. If you are thinking about doing one of the community engagement and collaboration posters, here's some potential ideas, and these are questions that I think I've seen raised elsewhere. If you've done an effort to try and reach out to other groups, what did that look like? Why did you do that? What were the outcomes of that? Again, maybe whatever you do is unique to your part of the world, but maybe it isn't. So document what it is you did. And as you're doing that, don't just tell us what you did and leave it at that. Think about, yeah, actually, this could also be relevant to other people in other parts of the world. So when you do your poster, think about how somebody in the other opposite side of the world could use this knowledge that you've established. Okay. So in that marking pie chart I had before, there was 20 marks for that first section that I've just dwelt on. 10 marks goes to the novel nature. So when assessing the posters for those prizes, and even just for whether the assessment of the abstract, is this novel? And most things generally are novel. And even if it isn't, as long as it's replicating something and that in itself advances our understanding of something, that's novel too. So novel isn't coming up with some idea that no one's ever thought of before. It's just approaching something or other and but thinking about how, if you are replicating it, how you're advancing the conversation forward. Okay. But the critical thing, and I say this whether anyone's doing a PowerPoint presentation or a poster or writing an essay, pose the question, so what? Because that's what a lot of your audience will be thinking. So what? Why do I care? Why should I care? Does this affect me? What should I do to change what I'm doing if it does affect me? So what? So the worst poster is the poster that literally says, we did this and we changed this and this was the outcome. That is the worst kind of poster because there's no context. There's no understanding of why everyone else should be interested in this. There's no thought about the impact. There's no thought about the relevancy to others. So ask yourself that question. That's why I put it in yellow. It's one of the most important things that you should do. So be self-aware. Is the phenomenon describing unique to you? And that's not a problem if it is. That's great that we now know about that. Because it might start to prompt people to think about something else. It's like, well, maybe we should be doing this, or maybe we might have this problem in the future. Maybe you're the first to have it or report it. But it's really important that you are self-aware. And again, to be self-aware, ask if you're not sure yourself, ask peers. Look at the research literature, whatever your work context is, to approach your poster. Look, see what else is out there. Can you involve peers? If you are at an editorial office, maybe work with 2 or 3 other editorial offices, to provide different controls. Equally, the problem with that is that no 2 journals are ever run the same way, and that there's always going to therefore be confounders in the data. Okay, so the third section, which is also worth 20 marks, is on content quality. And that really is, if you've done a lot of the homework in the first section, if you've got a novel idea, some of this will write itself, okay? Because you've got a great research question, your data's interesting. You can still stink it up. And so that is why I don't dismiss this, the content quality. So things like the effectiveness of the study design, is that the appropriate technique to answer that question? Did you adhere to study design principles? So a classic one then might be that you just changed your methods up halfway through. You started seeing a pattern emerging in the data, so you then adjusted and worked towards that. Now, maybe that's fine, but you need to disclose that. It also begs the question, is that really the right data to then be answering this new question that you have? The clarity of presentation is really important. And this is the correct use of graphs and tables. So too much text, it's not going to be clear. But the tables also need to be clear. You can put too much data into a table that's just going to stretch across your poster is going to be unintelligible to people, because probably within the first 15 to 20 seconds of standing in front of your poster, they've made a decision as to whether they're going to carry on reading or they're going to move on. Okay, so a giant table is not going to help. So you need something or other that's really quick to understand. That's why graphical visuals are great. Because they usually get right to the point and help you understand where, and interpret the data very quickly. We also want to see evidence that you're in command of what it is that you're doing here. So, sometimes, people will make their conclusion based on the results, and other people will look at it and go, well, actually, that's great. That is right, but in fact, you're missing the bigger picture, which is actually the bigger conclusion is this over here, and you completely missed it. So that would suggest you're not really in command of what it is you're doing. Now, this is where the abstract part of this process really comes in handy, because if you are discussing what it is you're doing and you've already done it, and this is conveyed in the abstract, we can very quickly see, actually, did you also find this? Because that actually might be more relevant or interesting or impactful. And that leads to that last point, is that really, really, the impact of the research findings are probably what will determine what are the prize winners. Is this going to lead us to think about something differently? Is this workflow change that you've done something all of us should be considering? Is this technique that you've used to engage with authors, is that something or other that we should all be applying? And what are the implications of that in terms of the quality of research published? These are all impacts, things that we would assess the posters on. The presentation itself, okay? This is the poster. So we need to see in the poster clear objectives and a powerfully stated take-home message. That is essential, okay? We must understand what it is that you're trying to achieve here. And at the end of it, at the end of the poster, I need to have one take-home message. It's like, okay, I gave 5 minutes of my life to read in this poster, and I learned this. And either that's great, that's really interesting, or it's like, wow, I need to go back and do this. I need to rethink how I do this. That's a take-home message. It needs to be blunt and to the point. It shouldn't be dressed in flowery scientific language. It should be to the point. It should be a simple design and organized carefully. There is pretty much a standard way of presenting a scientific poster. There are other ways of doing it, and that's great too. It just needs to be clear, whatever it is you're doing, and it needs to flow. If I have to sit there and scratch my head and interpret it like it's a Jackson Pollock painting, it's lost on me. I need to just be able to logically go through this because I'm in a poster session. There's a dozen other posters. I'm probably going to be moving on very quickly if I cannot grasp what it is you're trying to convey to me. Okay. It needs to be a harmonious and engaging presentation style. Okay, so don't use 10 different fonts, 5 different colors of fonts and things like that. It needs to look good, basically. Okay, just slapping it in and fuzzy graphics and things like that. It suggests sloppiness, even if you've not been sloppy. Presentation, just like I tell my kids, if you're going to go out dressed like that, people are going to think certain things about you if if you've got your shirt buttoned up wrong and your shoes on the wrong feet, that kind of thing. So just tighten it up. It doesn't take long to do. It just needs a good eye. Limit the word count. I've read multiple sources on this. They all seem to suggest anywhere from 300 to 800 words. The bottom line is brevity is best. Least number of words, the most success you're going to have in getting people to read your poster. Plain, accessible, and jargon-free language. Okay, so particularly at an EASE conference, if you are a researcher, there's a good proportion of the people that are attending the meeting are also not researchers. They're not dummies, they're smart. Some of them may not understand the scientific method all that well, but they do know how to read. So make it as jargon-free as possible so that you don't impress us folks that aren't professional researchers by using super technical language. It's just simply the simplicity of your message. If I can understand what it is you did, I might not understand the statistical technique, but if I understand what you did, then that's a powerful poster to me. And just for those of us that are a bit short-sighted, make it so that it's readable from 1 to 2 meters away, okay? Or 3 to 6 feet for those of you that are not on the metric system. A poster presentation should be broken down into the title, catchy but informative. I know sometimes people like to come up with, crazy funny titles, but that's fine. But make sure there's a colon followed by an actual description of what it is that the research topic is. Equally, it doesn't have to be supremely boring and describe everything you've just done. It just needs to convey what it is we're looking at and what it is you're trying to answer. The background, or I guess the introduction, is a brief overview of the research area. That's the context setting, so that if I know nothing about, I don't know a huge amount about AI, so you need to tell me about why this AI poster is, what the current conversations are in relation to what it is that you're studying, so that's the shortcut for me, so I understand what's going on. And then describe your research question as well. So it's actually clear to us what it is that we're supposed to be looking at here. Sometimes that doesn't always come across. It's obvious to you, and just because you put it in the maybe the title of the poster, it still doesn't necessarily convey what it is that we're trying to learn about here, or the problem you're trying to solve. Now, the methods section, a lot of people try to just brush over the methods. They want to race to get to the results. And it's true, the results are the things that people want to look at the most. But the methods are really important for all the things that I said before. If you're excluding data, why? That sort of stuff. For a poster, I'm not opposed to seeing this summarized in the table. I mean, there probably should be some text, but summarize some of this in a table. So it's just boom, 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 boom. Now I've established what they've done. They did this, they excluded that, blah, 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 blah. Great. Now we're ready to go. I understand these results. I'm going to be able to understand these results a bit better because I know how you collected the data. In the results section, present the key findings. Don't overload us with 10 key findings. I know you want to, maybe you found a bunch of really interesting things. The best posters are the things that just have one or maybe two super impactful things. You're not going to be able to convey all 10 things adequately in a poster. So maybe just make your poster a focus on maybe the most impactful thing or whatever criteria you want to judge it on, but make it ideally just on one or two things and keep those findings restricted to that. Use visuals, graphs, and charts as much as possible, okay? And then finally, the conclusion, summarize the key findings and restate the main conclusions, okay? So this is for impact, because I may not quite have understood some of the results. Make sure that conclusion really hammers home the message. And then if I read that, I might then go back to the results because I didn't quite understand it the first time. I've read the conclusion and then, it just, the fog lifts and suddenly it all makes sense, okay? And so this is probably the typical poster design that you would see at a conference. So the title at the top, introduction, the methods, the results in the middle, the conclusion on the right, and then the references and other acknowledgements at the bottom. There are many other ways of doing this. This is just a common one. But for those of you who have not really done a poster before, this is why I'm putting this slide in here. So just take a moment to take that in. If this is the first time you've ever done this, this is a typical format that you might see. It's the tried and trusted way. I just wanted to dwell on a couple of things still about the presentation. I'm going to go back to this methods section again. And again, this is particularly maybe for those of you that aren't full-time researchers. But you might want to either, like I said, summarize things in a table to save space. But if you are talking about something that you did in the editorial office, and you're doing a pre and post intervention study, you might want to use a flowchart. That is a good way to show what you did. If you are wanting to convey who was included and excluded from a study, a flowchart's another way of doing that. Yes, no. If they said yes to this question, then they went on to the next section. If they said no, they were excluded. So the flowchart helps us understand very quickly what it is that we're looking at. And I would always use a simple visual over words if you can. And again, most people are reading these posters in their second or even third language, so visuals are a nice shortcut. Here's an example, and again, maybe this is particularly for those of you that that don't do this very often, don't do research very often. You might recognize this if you're from an editorial office, is that what we're trying to show in this, the table would typically be on the right, the black boxes, I've just blanked out the names. But you'd be reporting on editor performance, the associate editors, how they handle peer reviewing manuscripts or handling manuscripts. And, the tables can get quite overwhelming because there's a morass of data there. So a visual, on the other hand, like on the left, is a great shortcut. And so in this particular chart, the size of the bubble reflects the number of papers that the editors handled, the number of days it took for them to complete the assignment. It goes upwards on the right. And then the rejection rate goes upwards. And so if you wanted to split that into quadrants, if you're wanting your editors to be fast and rejecting high, you want them in the upper left quadrant. Well, this is a great visual to very quickly see which editors are your most effective. Now, I dwell on this simply to show you how a visual on a poster creates a shortcut that I probably wouldn't be able to quickly discern that from a table. I mean, fine if it was a research paper and I'm sitting there and dwelling on this, but if it's at a poster and there's other people standing around me, I need a shortcut because I probably don't have a huge amount of time before I'm going to have to move. Think about readability and typography. So my recommendation is you use sans serif. I think that's pretty common, and use fonts like Arial or Helvetica. I think that's pretty common in research posters. It's just easier to read. Font size, like I said, it's got to be legible from 1 to 2 meters away. And think about contrast and color as well. So I think about this a lot because I'm actually colorblind. So I really have trouble with reds and greens. And so if you've got a lot of red and greens, particularly on a chart, I can't tell the difference. So, think about that. Maybe it should be really either bold, highly contrasting colors, or you actually use dotted lines, dashed lines, that kind of thing. But it's a real problem, and same for text as well. I might see white text on a gray background. That's actually really hard to read. Okay, so keep it really bold and that color contrast high. I can't stress that enough. Okay, so one of the things that eases encourages is a submission of videos to supplement your poster. And I think what you might find these to be is really a 5-minute oral presentation. Okay, consider it that. So it's like boom, you've got to really get your message across. It needs to be impactful right from the go. I don't think it needs to literally be a regurgitation of your poster. Just reading all the words on your poster doesn't make for an interesting. I can do that myself. I don't need you to then read it to me. What I would love to see in a video is, okay, yeah, maybe the different sections of the poster form one of your slides, but you actually talk about the meaning a bit more. Talk about the meaning. Talk about the impact. Talk about the context a little bit more because you can expand on it. And again, this is meant to supplement, not replace the poster. Okay, so this is a chance for you to just give us a little bit more to work with. Okay. I would immediately start any video with, by watching this, you're going to learn X and Y. Okay. By the end of it, you'll be that much smarter for having watched it because of X and Y. There are two ways to present your poster. There is the talking head format, which is literally you just film yourself, and there's no slides. Or you can do the recorded PowerPoint presentation folder. So the person's in the corner, you can see them in the corner talking, and then you see the slides. At the last EASE conference, there were 11 posters, of which 5 featured a video presentation. 2 of those were direct to camera, so just the person talking at the camera, and 3 were poster videos with PowerPoint slides. Okay, so this was one of the prize-winning posters last time, and I really liked their video submission that came with it. So again, you see the presenter in the corner, the poster. First of all, you saw the poster itself, and then what they really did well was they did take sections of the poster and turn those into slides, and they did a really good job of conveying the impact of their findings. And I learned a lot from watching the video. The other thing about the video is that maybe you're not always standing by your poster. You might not even be there. So this is a chance for me to hear from you. This is I do strongly encourage you to consider submitting a video as well. I think they greatly enhance the value and the impact of your poster. So if you're recording slides, the best videos contain those visual elements from the poster, but summarized. Devote time to explaining the significance of the study, and save the last 15 to 30 seconds for a succinct take-home message, okay? And transcripts are helpful. And by the way, there are now different softwares. You can just Google this that will give you transcripts, including Microsoft Streams. We use that to gain transcripts and conversations like this today. If you are recording this in PowerPoint, with modern versions of PowerPoint, you just do insert cameo, and that puts the presenter in the corner. That's my friend. You might recognize that as Randy Townsend. Some of you will know Randy. And you then just simply record it and save it as a movie file afterwards. And you can submit that with the poster to ease. And I'm almost done. So just quickly, if you are going to do direct-to-camera presentations, try to break up the video so it's not a continuous shot of you staring into the camera. Not even a Hollywood actor is going to do that for 5 minutes. It's pretty tough viewing. So if you had a collaborator, maybe do a video as a conversation with you and your collaborator. That'd be more interesting. Move, gesture, speak slowly, and do not read from a script. If you read from a script, it's going to be really, really tough to listen to. Okay? It's best if you rehearse what you say and hone that message down and make it sound as natural and conversational as possible. And also, if you want to learn some technical tips about how to do this, Duncan Nicholas did a phenomenal guide on how to do this. I think it's been posted in the chat. Certainly, you can find a link to this that Duncan did for ease a little while ago, and it's great for the technical stuff of setting up the camera, audio recording, backgrounds, that kind of stuff. Don't do this background where you've got bright light behind you, by the way. Okay, so to conclude, to ensure that your poster resonates with its potential audience, ask yourself the one key question that poster viewers themselves will ask. So what? Okay? And design your poster to answer that research question effectively and communicate the meaning of your findings clearly. That may seem self-evident. I've looked at enough posters that apparently it isn't. So again, put yourself in the audience's shoes. Think about why they should care about what you've got to say, and are they going to be able to interpret your findings clearly? Okay, thank you very much. I will end the presentation there. Now there's some questions. Let's see.
Hi, Jason. Yes, we've got a few questions. So let me just get these for you. Okay, so this one that's just literally come in, so I've got it on my machine now. This is from Hugo Enrico. He says, great presentation, Jason, thank you. I think that during Congress poster presentation, the person who is going to present should consider this moment as quick talking, highlighting the main topics of the poster, instead of it being up there reproducing all the things that that could simply be read. So I think this goes to what you went on to say, doesn't it? So
couldn't agree more.
It's a nice comment from him. Joy Borough has just made the point about, not really a question, but just a point that I think, again, you covered a little bit. Not everyone will know the most effective design to follow and still base their design on the IMRAD sequence. So she said the take-home, the findings and the take-home message should be near the top, not buried at the bottom.
Yeah. That's actually, I mean, again, you can design your poster any which way you want. There's no law on this. And I kind of agree with you to some extent. Because everyone's going to read from top left down. So I kind of agree. Maybe put it right up there at the start as to this is going to be the take home message. Yeah, I mean, think about that.
Okay. And then there's a question here which comes in from Nastasia. In the scientific poster category, if the topic presented has been published in a particular journal, is it still allowed to follow the scientific poster scheme? Is she still able to submit it?
I don't know ESA's rules on that, but I would think.
I think there's no rules against that, so I think that would be fine.
The issue is less probably with ease. It's probably more with just make sure that you're allowed to do that. I can't imagine you're not. Most journals don't care about that sort of thing. And also, if you're the author, you have your own fair use rights. But that is something to just ponder. I mean, that is actually a good point, just generally. Make sure that you are allowed to present this data. Okay, so maybe if you're working on a major project that you're going to publish in a big journal, some of them may consider a poster prior publication. So just make sure that you are familiar. If you are thinking, yeah, we're going to submit this to, I'm not going to name a journal, but think of one of the mega journals. I do know some of them are very strict on this. So just make sure that if that is your intention, that this isn't going to be a problem, okay? Because I'd hate for an ease poster to jeopardize your chance at publishing glory.
Okay, then I've got two people that have got their hand up. One is Eric. So Eric, if I allow you to talk now, you'll be able to come on and say what you want to say if you're still there. And the other is Marino Quintella. So I'm going to enable you to speak, and Airy as well. So Airy Breen, I'm going to do that for all of you. Are any of you there? Eric, are you there? Maybe not. Airy, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay,
If you
go
can hear
ahead.
me. Yeah.
Yes, go
Well,
ahead.
I was just going to say, well, first of all, thank you, Jason, for a very good presentation. And about whether you could present results or data that you have previously published in a journal, I think you can, because the other way around, I think most journals will accept to publish data that you have presented as a poster, at least as long as that poster is not available online. So I think the other way around will be fine.
Yeah, it is worth checking, because I did know of a case years ago where someone had put an abstract in at a meeting. It was published in this particular journal I ran in their abstract handbook, and then the major journal, and it's one of the big medical journals, said, "Sorry, but you can't now publish the actual paper."
No, exactly. But
Yeah,
that if you don't make sure that your poster or abstract won't be available in a abstract handbook or something, I think
yeah,
it's okay.
good.
There are
Thank
two
you.
comments about that in the chat, Jason. So
Yeah.
Hugo Enrico says, I believe that the natural course would be a poster presentation and then a paper publication. And
Mhm.
Chem Yuzen, who's our EASE president, has also commented, posters are presented for initial discussion. Presentation after publishing in a journal is not considered good by many societies. So it's just a couple of comments there from Chem. Okay, so I think that Marina has kind of signed off with us, so they say thank you very much. But what about Feodos Anghanger? Are you there?
Yes, yes, I'm
Go ahead
here.
and speak. Yep.
So thank you for your presentation. But I see that some of the conferences have a certain specific format, like American Chemical Society or others. That we have to strictly follow that. And now with the recent introduction of videos, which you mentioned, are you going to conduct any kind of seminar where you can talk about this Cameo and or what kind of presentation, or does the website of EASE have any such kind of material which we can refer to, how to make a video presentation, any kind of a short general topic? Second thing is that if I have a research which I have already done, but I want to publish it now, but is it possible that before that I can submit it for poster presentation, or it will create later conflict with the journal to whom I'm going to submit it?
Well, Mary, I think I just saw something flash up. I think you just posted a link there, didn't you, to some of the
Yeah,
technical
so
stuff. Yeah.
the two things for the EASE presentation, for the poster exhibition and competition that we're doing at the 18th EASE conference. I've just popped in the chat, and I will send it to you again tomorrow to make sure it's really clear. This is the page where we have the specification of the posters that you need to do for us. They're not overly prescriptive. It's fairly straightforward, so it sort of makes it as accessible to as many people as possible. So for us, that's all the detail there on that link. If if you're submitting to a different conference, then obviously you need to follow their guidelines. But your other question was about whether or not
Video.
as far as video resources, how to create a video concern, I will include
Yes,
in the
ma'am.
email tomorrow as
Okay.
many resources as I have available in EASE for you to be able to follow up with. So I'll do all that when I email you the recording of today's workshop tomorrow. And then your other question about whether or not if you're going to submit to a journal, a paper to a journal.
Yes,
I think
yes,
I think the easiest thing is just to ask that question, so that you're really sure. If you're thinking about presenting a poster and you're then thinking about submitting that to a journal, before you do that, just check with them. Say, look, I was going to, I was hoping I could present this as a poster to the EASE conference. Is that allowed? So yeah, I think you can, just ask the question, and then you'll be sure to have it from the horse's mouth, because I guess, many journals will have different policies.
What about, ma'am, because sir didn't talk about the plagiarism also, because now for the publishing the paper, we have plagiarism or use of AI. Is there a kind of a restriction on the use of AI and plagiarism extent to which it is allowed when presenting a poster? Because sometimes what you do is that you take the base model from some other journal or other poster and then use a replica and try to build on those lines. Will that create a problem with the plagiarism, or it doesn't really matter?
I think this is about transparency, isn't it, Jason?
Yeah,
So if you're building on someone else's work, then you need to cite them and make sure you're citing them correctly.
And again, when it comes to the use of AI, I think at this point it's just disclose what it is that you and how you've done it. So there are some journals out there that I know that say if you've used AI, we're not interested. But
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
most journals are now starting to recognize, well, that's a crazy perspective. However, we
Hmm.
need to know precisely what it is that you've, how did you use AI? What tools did you use? That kind of thing. It's a very fluid space right now. I think opinions have changed literally in the last year, and
I
it'll
mean, in the poster, is it the data that matters, or is it the language that matters? What do you think, based on your experience in the past EASE conferences? Is it the data? Because sometimes what happens is that the language, we are not so good at English because we come from English is no ESL. So is
I
it
think
they are really interested in the experimental innovation, which we can present well in the form of data or tabular forms, but maybe there are languages not so fluent, or we can say exclusive language. What really matters to get a good poster?
Well, I mean, I think language is, it's there as an issue. I mean, if it's unintelligible, it's a problem, but it's certainly not what people are judged on. I mean, I think there's a very real understanding that English isn't the language of most people. So that's
Yes,
fine.
yes, yes.
And this is scientific. So again, the less number of words you're using, people are going to get where you're getting to. The data is one thing. It's not just the results. I
Hmm.
mean, if you've got negative results, that's awesome too. It's also the quality of the study and frankly the interest, the novel element of the research question. Is this something really interesting? Wow, nobody's thought about that before. Or if they have thought about it before, this is an interesting take on it. Or this is really important to see that this journal also experienced this, or this community also experienced this. So it's a multitude of things that go into this. It's not one thing, but certainly, poor quality English is not
Right.
going to be scored down on. And I'm
Okay.
sure there'll be help as well if needs be.
Okay. And you
Okay.
mentioned about Canva. You mentioned about one Cameo or something about for you inserting in the PowerPoint, right?
Yeah, you can
Uh,
do that on new versions of PowerPoint. I must admit I can't, which is why I had to get Randy Townsend to show me how to do it. But certainly on newer versions of PowerPoint,
I have
it,
365.
yeah,
I
you
have
can.
subs.
Yeah, and then you
Oh,
just appear just like how I probably did on this presentation, where it's just I'm in the corner. And I think
yes, yes.
I mean, it's better than just having an audio over a slide, a set of
Yeah, it's
slides.
kind of a
Yeah.
boring. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you,
All
ma'am.
right. Thank you. So, Jason, there are just a couple of quick questions as well in the Q&A. So, Andre Silva asked, what about references on the presentation? Do you want to just touch on that?
Yeah, I think there should be. I mean, again, you're not going to have a huge amount of space, so there should be, I don't know, 2 to 5 references, ideally. I mean, if there is nothing, I mean, again, if it's an editorial office that's literally just reporting what it did, there probably isn't much to put in there. That's fine. It's your poster's not going to live and die on that. But again, I think it's really important for context that we do have some extra reading. If somebody's genuinely interested in what you've had to say, that they will then they can then go away and follow up and pursue it more.
Okay. All good. And then an anonymous attendee with us today said, how long should you take to explain your poster to someone at a conference where there's lots of people? And I guess that's largely to do with, feel the pressure of the people waiting to talk to you. So if there's no one waiting to talk to you, you can explain for quite a long time. But what's your thoughts about that, Jason, as someone who's probably stood in a lot of poster exhibitions?
Yeah. Well, let's face it, they're often quite socially awkward moments as well. And I know some people will walk past the poster if they see somebody standing there. Other people just come over and you can't get rid of them. You're stuck with them for 10 minutes. So I think the thing is to really just say, answer that so what question. This is impactful or important because this. And then if there's genuine interest and they want to know more, then you delve into it more. If they go, that's great, don't then trap them and say, great, well, can I just tell you what I did? If you tell them what the impact of it was and they go, okay, great, that might be a cue to just be like, okay, just keep it light, don't go on. But I mean, again, and also I think what you should do is be cognizant that if you've got one person that's talking to you and there's three other people looking at your poster, try and move yourself so that you can include them. Give them maybe a chance to just read the poster. If they literally just got there, don't grab them. If somebody comes over to your poster, say hello. Just say, I'm one of the collaborators. I'm not just some random person standing here, and happy to talk this through with you. But I'll give you a few seconds to read this. Just read, get some social cues here. Just read what people want to do.
So just to let you know, it's a very friendly atmosphere at the EASE conference. So everyone is on your side. Everyone wants to encourage you and find out about what you've done with your poster. So please don't feel intimidated. And as I say, just bring your best to us, and we will help you along with it. So Jason, I'm conscious of our time. We're just over our time. Thank you so much for a really in-depth workshop to help us get this right. I will, as I said in the chat many times, I will send everything out to you tomorrow. So look out for that coming into your emails sort of by about lunchtime tomorrow. You'll have the recording, the slide deck, all of the links of all the things we've mentioned. And if you haven't had your questions answered, I'm conscious we've got one or two questions that we haven't got to. So if you haven't got your questions answered and you would like them answered, then please just email me at secretary@ease.org.uk, and then we will ask Jason just to answer any odd ones by email. But thank you so much for attending. It's been great to see so many people from all over, and good luck with your posters, and I hope to see you at the EASE conference.
Thank you, everyone.
Many thanks, Jason. Okay, bye-bye.